Sister Anna Imelda, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you for coming out to our area over here.
No problem. It was a nice drive in this area of Houston that I've never grown up in or had never, I guess, ventured towards. So it was an opportunity for me to come out here and visit y'all.
We like to call this, East San Antonio.
As far as I can go.
This far out. Did you have to adjust your watch?
Oh, no. Not quite yet.
Your order is, what's the name of your community?
The Dominican Sisters of Mary Immaculate Province.
And what's your role there right now?
Currently, I am in teaching. So I'm a teaching teacher. The past years that I've been in the Diocese of Fort Worth teaching high school theology.
So are you now here in Houston?
I have a new mission that I received in April. I'll be in the Diocese of Beaumont teaching high school at Monsignor Kelly Catholic High.
Now, you mentioned that you're from Houston.
Yes, I grew up in Houston, Northwest Houston, but born in Philly. Then moved to the Bay Area in California, lived in Oakland for a few years. Then my family settled here in 91 in Northwest Houston.
What moved you around?
My parents were both they were immigrants from Vietnam.
Okay.
And so they were boat people. They met each other in the Philippines. Oh, it's Malaysia.
Okay.
They met each other in Malaysia.
A refugee camp?
A refugee camp in Malaysia. And they fell in love. And what happened was when the paperwork processed, then my dad ended up going with his sister to Philly. Okay. And my mom went with her sister to Oakland.
Oh.
And a friend of the family on my mom's side, who's actually, I found out was, if I remember correctly, he's also friends with my uncle, my dad's brother-in-law, who was in Philly. So he tracked my dad in Philly, and my mom ended up moving over to Philly to be with my dad.
Okay.
And so my older brother and I were born in Philly. I didn't live there too long. I was told a few months, then we moved over to Oakland. And I think the reason why we went back to Oakland because my aunt had a responsibility to care for my mom.
Okay.
And my mom also had a responsibility to care for her niece and nephew.
Okay.
That with her immigrated here to the U.S. And then from there, life in California, it was not as luxurious as you would think.
Yeah.
And my cousins had moved to Houston.
Okay.
So they invited my parents to settle in Houston. And
more opportunity.
Yeah, more opportunity.
Okay.
And I'm very grateful that we took that opportunity. My mom was afraid of the earthquakes. We were actually there, and I can remember remnants of the 89 earthquake that happened in the Bay Area. Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing things topple, but at that time I didn't know how severe it was until much later in life.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. And that's the earthquake that, some of the
bridge
highways
collapsed.
collapsed. They just collapsed on.
And then they got a clip
people,
of it,
right?
I think, at the athletics baseball game. So there was a game that was happening, and then there was the earthquake happening. So I remember seeing replays of that clip much later in life.
Like, hey, we just moved here. All right. Yeah. What am I getting myself into, right?
Yes.
Okay. And especially if you don't grow up with the earthquakes, you know, it's something that you really have to get used to.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Now that's interesting. Do you remember Philly at all? No.
No, I did not. I was there. I was born, I heard 6 months later after I was born.
Oh, okay. Did you ever go back?
Yes. My dad's side of the family is still in the Philly area, New England area. Yes.
But that is a cute story. Your parents meeting in the refugee camp. They've got to make a movie out of that.
That's what I said. I didn't tell my mom. I was like, I'll probably get royalties for it though. I said to my brothers, I think we should have like a book published.
Yes.
And get into the movies or something. But it was just like seeing how providential that was for my parents, because for them to find each other again.
Yes.
This is way before the internet, before what we have now. But for them to find each other, I guess they were each other's first love as well. And so, for her to move over to be with my dad and the fidelity that they have for each other to now. So we've always tried to figure out what date do we celebrate? Because my parents' situation, my dad is actually Buddhist. To this very day, he's still Buddhist.
Wow, okay.
And my mom is Catholic.
Oh.
And they didn't actually get married until much later in life because of circumstances and things of nature. And then we were like, we don't want to celebrate your wedding anniversary because that'd be like even shorter than our anniversaries. And so I asked my mom, so what if we were to celebrate what anniversary, what year would that be? She said, how about 1980 when Dad and I had met? And I was like, okay, we will celebrate that. And so next year, it will be like their 45th anniversary, I guess you can say. So I'm hoping my brothers and I would kind of figure out something for them.
How old were they when they met?
Oh gosh, they're in their 20s,
Okay.
mid-20s or so. Yes.
So it wasn't like little kids in a refugee
They're not little,
camp.
little kids.
Okay.
They're not, no, they were adults. And so my mom, I guess, growing up in Vietnam, and women they would get married early, either in the late teens or early 20s. And my mom was, I think, mid-20s at that time. My dad was a little either to mid to late 20s. I'll be honest with you, I can't remember my parents' ages, but I think that's when they met. Yeah, so
wow,
early 20s, or maybe she's a refugee camp, maybe early 20s, and officially having a family around her mid-20s or their mid-20s.
They've got to make a book out of that or a movie or something.
I know.
Back in the 80s, they would have made like a made-for-TV movie.
Yeah, it's like like a Lifetime or like
yeah,
a Hallmark movie.
Yeah, one of those after-school specials.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, you said your mom is Catholic, yes, but your dad is Buddhist. What was it like growing up?
Well, I didn't know my dad was not Catholic. And so,
so he'd go with you to church?
Yes. So growing up, he always made certain that we went to Mass, went to church, we received the sacraments. He was the one that drove us. Which looking back at it now, I was very grateful. My mom never got her driver's license to this very day.
Oh, wow.
So my dad would commute us everywhere. And because we went to Mass together as a family, and he reminded us to say prayers, that I never knew he was not Catholic until maybe it was the first time, I think was either 1995 or 1999. I think 1995, when my family went to Vietnam to visit family over there for the first time. And then we would commute back and forth between my parents' families, and we were on my dad's side. And it was a Saturday, and I was asking my cousins, hey, what time is Mass the next day so I can get ready and wake up? And she said, what do you mean? And I'm like, yeah, don't you go to Mass? And she said, what do you mean? Do you not know that we're not Catholic? And I ran to my mom, and I was like surprised. And I hopefully I didn't call him a pagan or something, but I didn't know.
How old were you?
If it's 1995, I was 10. Okay. So I think it was 1995 when I found out my dad was not Catholic. And I ran to my mom, and she was cleaning up, and I said, Mom, in Vietnamese, I was like, is Dad not Catholic? And then, so it was the first time me asking that question. And I think she was very surprised of me finding out for some odd reason. And she brushed it off, and she said, we are Catholic. So she's like, we are Catholic. But she didn't answer my question as Dad is not Catholic. And I went back to my cousin. She's like, look around you. The whole house has nothing but Buddha statues. What do you mean we're not Catholic? So
you were oblivious to it because you were young.
I was oblivious. Yeah, I was young, and my dad went, and then we grew up on my mom's side of the family. And we were all Catholic on my mom's side. We received the sacraments. And again, my dad was the one that reminded us he would always just say, make the sign of the cross. Yeah. And that's how we would pray before meals. We didn't have the bless us, O Lord, for these gifts, or pray the Our Father. We just sign ourselves and we would dig in. And that's what he would tell us to do. And so that's why it was an eye-opener for me. But it wasn't too shocking. But then when I visit my cousin's side, I mean, granted, when we were younger, I would say we were minimalist Catholics. Okay. Receiving the sacraments and making sure we go to Mass on Sundays. But I didn't pay too much attention whenever we visited my dad's side of the family. It was just vacation, right? We don't think about Mass or things of that nature. Okay. And so when I found out, they celebrate Christmas. And I was like, everyone celebrates Christmas. And then to one of my cousins who tagged along on my mom's side, he went with us on a Christmas trip, and we were celebrating Christmas. We were opening up gifts. And then he just asked a question. And this was already when I knew that they were not Catholic. And then he said, why are your cousins celebrating Christmas? And I snapped at him. I was like, everyone celebrates Christmas. What do you mean? Because that's how we grow up, right? Yeah. Everything's commercialized, and so everyone celebrates. And he said, but they're not Catholic. And I looked at him. I'm like, almost like chastise him at the same time, looking at him. Like, don't call my family out like that. But then when it really hit me, and this is when I think slowly in this process of me really owning my own faith life, that those things really took to heart. I'm not saying that they should not be celebrating Christmas. And it was a way that brought the family together. Yeah. Gift exchange and things. But really now looking at it in the lens of my vocation and how much I love the faith, like the meaning of Christmas and the deeper meaning with the birth of Christ. So it just takes on a whole different feel and emotions and understanding of my own Catholic faith. Something that, again, starting to reclaim, right? Yeah, yeah. They can celebrate all they want. I mean, but for me, and then how I've celebrated as a sister in the community, that it has taken on a different role in understanding in my own faith life.
Did you ever talk to your dad about, hey, Dad, you're Buddhist, but what was your thinking here?
That was a good question. I've never had the, I guess you say, courage to.
Okay.
Our sisters have always asked me, you should go home and one day, one summer, just sit there and talk to your dad.
Yeah.
And I told our sisters, I'm a little afraid, maybe afraid that he would do it just because of me, because I'm the only girl in the family. So I have an older brother and a younger brother, and I am a daddy's girl. I admit to that. There's nothing wrong with that. I still go to my dad for things or talk to him, but I didn't want it to be as though it's because of me.
Okay.
And I know that people might kind of question that. No, I don't think he'll do that. Maybe he just needs someone to encourage him. And I was like, I think there have been people in our family, family members asking him about that. I just feel as though like he gave me the opportunity to live freely my vocation, like in my faith life, even though looking at it was almost forced, but then providentially that it became something that I have come to own. So it's not like so much inherited. Like I understand my mom was Catholic, and then I think one of the reasons why we were Catholic or we were baptized as infants was an agreement I think he had with my grandfather.
No,
I think I've eavesdropped. I think I may have eavesdropped on a talk between my uncle.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I mean, I have a relative. I don't give away names or anything, but I have a relative who, they're I think the husband was Catholic and the wife was Protestant, and the wife's dad said to her, "Look, you go to one place. Whatever you guys decide, go to one place so your kids will grow up that. Because if you go in the middle, your kids are not going to know which way to go, and then they may end up without any faith at all." Yeah, so maybe that's what the thinking was.
I never asked him. I never asked him why did he want us to be Catholic, and I think maybe because of the circumstances of my parents and maybe conversations with my grandfather, that he made that commitment to have us baptized. Which for me, I'm very grateful that he did. Because if it was left on my own to make a decision. Yeah. Like later in life, like how some millennials are now allowing their kids to do, I be honest with you, I don't know if I would have been Catholic.
Yeah, because there's a lot of influence from
well, not just the
secular world,
but like growing up, because I didn't start really owning my faith until the time when I was preparing for the sacrament of confirmation. But again, all that was almost by force.
Yeah,
all that was by force. Right? But until finally I realized there's just something more that I had felt interiorly, like God was asking of me.
Okay.
But for me, I know that I can be a stubborn person, and then I needed that push.
Yeah.
I need to be forced to go to CCD classes. I need to be forced to do this. I need to be forced to even like complete community service hours, because that was part of the requirement back then to prepare yourself for the sacrament of confirmation. But all of that, when I look back on it, was really one way or another played a huge role in my vocation.
It reminds me of something that my son said to me. Like he had some issues in high school, and we encouraged him to go to the youth group, and he came back and said, "I wish you had forced me to go there earlier on." I was like, we were trying to make, at that point in our faith lives, we were like, we'll let you try and decide. But I can see exactly what you're saying. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe, when I'll tell you one thing, in my experience, my parents, when they get older, they're a little more relaxed with sharing things. So maybe as your parents get older, they're...
he has great friends who are Catholic. Like these guys are like council members, or they participate in the parish life. And so I would believe that maybe this conversation have come up, and I'm just, I don't know what he's waiting for. I don't know. Maybe God is like really wanting me to ask him, but I just never had that courage. And I had prayed for it. I had prayed about it. And I was like, okay, this summer I'll maybe go home and talk to Dad about, just these things about the faith life, or what does he believe, or things. I mean, he goes to mass and he's heard homilies and he's shared that with us at times. And I'm like, like, did you hear that? I probably fell asleep. I didn't realize that was being said.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if you went back and he goes, oh yeah, it was confirmed like 5 years ago.
But I'll be mad though. I mean, honestly, I want to be there
if course.
But then if he surprised me for some odd reason.
That would be hilarious.
Well, thanks, Dad. Just okay.
You've been Catholic all this time and you didn't tell her.
Yeah.
So that's cool that, you were able to, your dad was still able to, ask you guys to pray before meals and all of that. Yeah. So, did you think about any religious vocation early in life?
No, honestly, my sounds like it's very strong word. So I was very fortunate. Now I see it, very blessed and fortunate that my community. So I grew up at Our Lady of the Bang Parish in Northwest Houston.
Okay.
So we had the presence of the Dominican Fathers.
Okay.
Didn't know much about the Dominican vocation or Dominican order, but I also saw our sisters there. And through the sacramental prep classes that I had the sisters who formed us. But I didn't know what they were about. So I wouldn't call it a bad experience, but when you're a kid and you get held back from moving up with your classmates, you start hating things, right?
Okay.
And that's what happened with me when I was in First Holy Communion. I got held back because I had no clue what I was receiving, no clue what I was doing.
Oh, so
they held me back.
1 year from receiving communion.
Yes.
So all your friends were going up to the line.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, this is like, I thought it was just like a freebie kind of thing. Like, oh, you go through the class. I didn't know. Like, it was like tough because we had a little question and answering towards the end. But at that time, didn't think of it. Then it made me hate the sisters. Like, I don't want to be near them. This is a little kid, right? But grateful that they didn't just push me up and say, okay, it's like everyone can receive Jesus, right? No, you have to really be fully aware, or hopefully at that age, know what you're receiving, who you're receiving. And I couldn't even answer the basic tenets of the faith. I sat there in class, but nothing was going in. And so the simple question, how many gods are there? And I remember staring at the sister. I'm like, I don't know if I couldn't understand the question or I just couldn't understand. I mean, I couldn't answer her or I got nervous. And then she said, okay. She just looks at me. She said, can you tell me how many persons of the Trinity are there? I'm like, I couldn't answer the questions for some odd reason.
So you froze pretty much.
Froze. And then she said, okay, I'll give you a second chance, but your mom will sit in. And I remember that one time my mom sat in. I was looking over for her to give me the answer. She wasn't like looking at me. She just stared off into space. I'm like, Mom, give me.
You're like, sweating bullets and
same questions because I still remember them. And then I got held back, and eventually did receive it, the sacrament of First Holy Communion, the year later. So I was like a year behind my peers.
How did your mom react to that?
I don't think she really.
She didn't get mad.
She didn't get mad. It was like you're like a failure in your faith or something.
At the parish.
No, she didn't.
Nowadays, people would complain.
No, I don't think she was ever mad. No, I was just like, okay, I didn't know. And then I was able to receive the following year.
That's cool.
But then again, I didn't really care about the sisters. I just didn't, like, they're weird. To me, they were like weird. They wore the same thing and they had this multi-passenger van and I knew it was their van. And I'm like getting away from them. And so I will always see them. Then when it came to prepare for the sacrament of confirmation, our sisters again, this sister there was just something during that time that really the Holy Spirit was working within me. It wasn't right then and there that I got a vocation or anyone telling me you have a possible vocation. There was just something interiorly that was moving me. And it was not until after the year of preparing for the sacrament, or when I received the sacrament of confirmation, and we were congratulating everyone. And I stood there and I just said to myself, is this it? Because, it's like graduation, right? In the Catholic faith. And you're like, you're free. And then there was just a moment where I said to myself, is this it? There has to be something more.
Yeah.
Right? And I noticed there was a stirring in my heart. And especially that one of the requirements for us was that we were to fulfill 20 hours of community service.
Oh, yes.
And it was through that I just felt the sense of I want to give my life. But it was not yet vocation to religious life. So I was a sophomore in high school at that time. And, you had junior year, you had to start thinking about, what you're going to do so you can prepare all that for your senior year and just kind of roll out your senior year. And I thought at that time was maybe the military.
Oh.
Yeah, I really thought that maybe life. And then so I see all these things. My older brother is 3 years older, so he had received like the what is it, recruitment things and things of that nature, those ads.
And the pamphlets and all that,
yeah. And so like I was drawn. I was like, and my dad, though he left Vietnam, he had a sense of patriotism here to the US. So I think that was instilled in us too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it really drew me. It got me excited when I saw that or just thought of it. So the Marines was what was in the forefront of my lines. The Marines. I did not want to be on a boat for the rest of my life. I was in the Navy or things. Or I never thought about the Navy, the Army, or the Air Force. Something was about the Marines and maybe their motto, Semper Fidelis, that I was really drawn to. And so I was like, maybe it's going to be the Marines. And I really thought of that. I was like, I can see my life in the Marines. But I know that they also limit roles for women in the Marines later on. But so that was just there. And so piling that up kind of things like, okay, life of giving. That's what kept on moving me.
Oh, so a life of service
and
sort.
Giving of some sort. And I never thought of that before. Everyone was like, growing up in a Vietnamese culture, it was either doctors or these traditional kind of like
the surefire.
Yeah. So like being a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, but none of those ever really attracted me. And so life of service, one that attracted me the most was actually being a teacher. When I was in 4th grade, I remember that was the first desire I ever wanted to be a high school teacher. I remember telling the teacher that.
High school?
Yeah, I specifically said, I want to be a high school teacher. She looked at me, I was crazy. Like you don't say high school teacher. You just say, I just want to be a teacher when I grow up, right?
Yeah.
But I remember that in 4th grade. And then this life of service later on, thinking it was the military. So I slowly found ways to continue to give in service to my church, so to my parish. And I became a teacher assistant and I got involved with the confirmation program with the youth. Everything that was with them, I was there with them. And I just enjoyed that every weekend. And my mom was baffled because I never had this desire. And not many, at this time, no one in my family, my cousins, they're like, that's a waste of time. Why are you going back to the church?
Because you're a volunteer.
Yeah, I was volunteer. And I'm like, you're not getting paid. I'm like, yeah, but I had the sense of this internal commitment. And I would feel bad when I wasn't going to be there. And so they're like, you're like crazy. You're not getting paid. You're just like spending your time. And I was like, I don't know. I just need to be there. So I was there. And then.
So this was in high school?
This was when I was still in high school. Okay. So
were you dating?
No, I did not.
Your parents were super strict?
They never encouraged me, or they never said, oh, I think they were hoping that I would date or maybe later on the date to consider marriage. But that was never something important to me. Honestly, dating was not. Marriage is important, but not dating. No, so I have to make sure. I was about to say marriage was not important, but marriage was important for me. But dating was not, and I think because there was just something that I wanted to focus on, and I found something that I wanted to put all my energy in, which was helping out my parish, and I had the sense of realizing youth ministry was something that I want to get involved in. So I did help my parish to set up a youth ministry program.
What parish was this again? Our
Lady of Lavang parish. Okay. And so it was a little pop-up startup with a few.
Also from the ground up.
Yes. So I was I was in high school, and I was like, I think my senior year when we were starting to do that. And then we actually let it really roll out when I was in college, my first year. But then my senior year, actually, I backtracked just a bit. So my junior year, so about 6 months after I had received the sacrament of confirmation, there was just something deep down inside that I was in search of something.
Okay.
And in that fall of that junior year, I became, for some odd reason, angry at God.
Really?
I was just like, I was thinking about God's love, and I can't recall what led up to it. But I remember saying to myself, that if you love me, I mean, I hear this all the time, I want you to prove it to me. And I didn't know what that meant. I just kind of like put it, and then said, I know my family loves me, my cousin loves me, my friends and things. I feel their love, but I don't know why I feel very selfish. I just want to know your love in a very personal way. And so I ended up starting to cry because I just how angry I was. I don't know. It seems very senseless, but it's just like I was thirsting for God's love. And so I was listening. I mean, it was late 90s. boy bands were a huge thing. So I was a huge Backstreet Boys fan. And so most likely they were on my stereo, and I was pacing back and forth in my room. And, you know, I would go to these conferences or youth events, and they'd give you these little stickers, right? These like Christian stickers that says like a little sunshine, smile, Jesus loves you kind of thing. And then for some reason, I don't throw them away. I just stick them on my stereo.
Okay.
And I was pacing, and then it caught my attention. I was like, I'm familiar with these stickers. Like, why do I have to go to these stickers and read it? And then it said, smile, Jesus loves you, John 3:16. I was like, it's not that simple, is it? Like, really, God loves me like that? And so the one thing I remember the most in the second, preparing for the second confirmation, was being taught how to open the Bible. So I was like, at least I remember some things. So I went to open up my Bible to John 3:16, and it's the passage or the verse that, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, and whoever believes in him may not perish but may have eternal life. And I read it, I fell to my knees, and I started crying.
Wow.
It just really hit me to the core. I was like, this is how much God loves me, that he gave me his only son for me. And it sounds selfish, but I said, for me, this is what I've been searching for. And I had my, moment with God. And then kind of, I don't know how long that moment lasted for. I remember just kind of collecting myself and going back to the routine of things. And then I pushed that into the back burner. A few months later, junior year. A few months later, it's Christmas break. And I remember waking up one day, and I heard, I'm going to say it in Vietnamese, and when I just loosely translate it, these words, đi tu. And đi tu basically means like become a religious.
Ooh.
And I remember waking up. I don't offer morning prayer or evening prayer. Don't examine my conscience before I go to bed. But I just remember waking up, sitting, and I hear it. It was so clear and audible. It's like someone was just like right next to me. And I'm like, I looked around my room. No one's in my room. I sleep in my own bedroom. And I was like, maybe someone's like playing a prank on me. But it's like, if you're playing a prank on me, like, who in my family amongst my brothers like would know that phrase to say it to me? Or we speak Vietnamese, but like more or less before my parents, but not to each other. But I literally look around thinking that there was someone there. And I was like, my brothers aren't awake yet. It was like, I guess on a Saturday morning. And I'm like, maybe I'm just hearing things, right? So I like, whatever, go back. I mean, just push it back. But throughout that day, I heard it again. And it's Vietnamese, yeah. And I would say I speak Vietnamese well, but I would never have ever said those words to myself in which I also would understand it. I don't think to myself in Vietnamese, fluent in English.
So you think in English and you translate.
Yeah, I had to translate. Only when I need to talk to my parents. And so, but I was like, how do I know these words or this phrase? Like, what's going on? So it was a very subtle voice. It was not aggressive. Again, đi tu, become a religious. No. And so I pushed it. I was like, not me. Like be a sister. That's what it hit me. Like, no one has ever told me you would be a good sister. And I'm like, no. So I pushed it back again.
I want to join the Marines. Right?
I was like, yeah. So this is not yet my senior. There's a story behind that too.
Okay.
But and so I pushed it back, and it came back. It wasn't like every minute or every hour. It would just subtly come back, and I hear it, and I push it back. So I kind of like caved in. And I remember we were about to go bowling, right? And this back then, flip phones, and I had certain numbers on speed dial. Mom, dad, typical. My older brother had a cell phone. He never made it on my speed dial because he would never answer my call. But then the person after my mom and dad was the number to the convent, because I became good friends with. I was slowly becoming good friends with the sister who was preparing me for the sacrament of confirmation, and I didn't know why. Well, going back to that moment when during our celebration, I remember looking at sister. She was like congratulating people. I was looking at her in a distance, and I said to myself, or I heard a voice say to me, "You're going to be best friends with her." And I'm like, I'm not desperate to have religious sisters as friends. And so there was none of me. I was like, oh no, I'm not that desperate. But that she eventually became my best friend.
Wow.
After this. And so I had her on speed dial, and I'm like, okay, I'm about to go bowling. So I gotta go make this phone call. So I called her. I remember I was sitting at the base of the staircase at my house. And then I called and I said to sister, sister, I know this might be surprising, but I don't know why. I think God wants me to become a sister. And I hear this pause. I thought the line dropped or something. But we're on a landline. Because I called her landline. There's no way it can drop. But there was this long pause. She said, oh, and this long pause. And I'm just like, okay. I'm trying to understand this O that she has. You have like those two O's. Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, yeah. Oh, like, yeah. It's like she was just like, oh, like, maybe I'm not the person that God wants. Maybe that's a sign. But then she said, oh, okay. I think she's just trying to find words because she was surprised. I've never expressed this to her. She said, okay, I will send you the information to come and see. Do you think you can go this summer? And I was like, yeah, for sure. So I thought it was just that easy, like my verbal permission, and it's fine. I haven't told my parents yet at this time.
Okay.
So she's like, okay, I'll send you the paperwork and information through the sister. So pick it up from sister so-and-so at the parish. And I was like, okay, got excited. And going through it, I started filling my part. And then all I needed was my parents' signature because I was under 18.
Okay.
And I didn't tell my parents yet. And I was like, I'm going. And it wasn't until March, around my birthday, that I told my parents, my mom.
Oh, so this was a whole month's long
about
thing.
two or 3 months that it passed before I shared it with my family. That I really just dropped it. But I think in my Vietnamese that I was telling her I was becoming a sister rather than I'm discerning to be a sister. So I told her that. She's like, what did you say? And then there was like silence. My dad was not giving me eye contact. My brothers were looking away. And I'm just looking at my mom. I was eating breakfast. I was like, yeah. Again, I probably said, I'm becoming a sister rather than I'm discerning to be a sister. And she said, you do not understand how difficult the life of a sister is. Because she experienced a different, different sisters growing up. Okay. One a little bit more disciplined, I guess you could say. But I told her it was actually your fault, Mom. It's not because of the sisters. It's because you used to be late to school and things, and she would get...
And it was also that generation,
Yeah, generation.
Too.
So the corporal punishment was still there.
Yeah.
But then I was like, but it's because you were late to school, right? And I think she was trying to dissuade me. But then she finally kind of said, all right, I'll let you go. It's almost like very sarcastically, I'll let you go so you'll know how difficult their life is. Oh. And I'm like, look, I was a teenager. I was like, okay. So I got permission, right? So I went that summer. So I was entering my senior year. And I went and it was 3 weeks long. And then if you think about it now, some of this is, a lot of communities, like when we look at back, I was like 3 weeks long was a long time with a whole bunch of high school kids too. It's almost like babysitting them for this. It was like a summer camp or more or less.
Yeah.
And I went and the first week I was like, oh no, I'm not called to be a sister. And then it came to the second week and the vocation director was meeting with us individually just to get a feel how we're doing. And I think I remember telling her, I am not called to become a sister. And I'm glad she didn't ask me. She's like, did you get any signs or what reasons? And she was just very respectful. She said, okay, so the vocation director at the time is now our provincial superior, who is Sister Maria Teresa. And I was like, okay, I was waiting to see if she'd want me to explain. And I'm looking back, I'm like, thank God I didn't ask her. I mean, she didn't ask me to explain because it would have been very like shallow kind of like reasons. The reason why I thought I wasn't called, because that summer there was a priest that was celebrating Mass for our sisters, but he likes to celebrate it early during the summer. Okay. So we had to wake up at 5 during the summer. And later, I mean, realizing like we get to sleep in a little later. We get to wake up at 6 during the summer. We were waking up at 5 and then we would pray lauds, then have Mass, and then we'll have time of meditation. I was a high school student. And so I was saying to myself, who wakes up and prays at 5 in the morning? Because I'm still ignorant about religious life. And so that's the reason why I thought I wasn't called. So
just because of waking up early.
Waking up early. That's because, and I'm like, okay, I'm not called to this. It's like, maybe this is the reason my mom was telling me, and I'm not, this is not what is as easy as I thought it would be. But sister asked me just to continue to stay. We had still about a week and a half left of our come and see, and we had a 3-day silent retreat. I'm like, I never experienced that, but you have a whole bunch of girls on a silent retreat, high school girls. We'll see how that goes. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll still stay. And enter silent retreat. There was just something at that moment I felt certain that I was going to receive a grace for some odd reason. But looking back, it was more or less like God's going to give you a grace to know that you're going to have a vocation to the religious life. So I went in for the 3-day silent retreat, and I kind of was like, body language probably was saying like being a high school girl. Like the one thing is I was not forced to go to the come and see. I went voluntarily.
Yeah.
But then I was just like, I guess not the attitude, but the body language maybe was saying like maybe I don't want to be here. And there was a conference that we had by one of the priests. I kind of daydreamed a bit and gazed off. And I said to myself that, I looked up and I saw that I saw a book, and the title of the book was Little Steps to Great Holiness. And I remember writing that down in my journal, and I put a huge question mark next to it. Then I said to myself, I said, maybe I'm not called right now, but maybe later. And so if I had permission to enter that summer, back then we had a high school boarding program in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And if you enter in high school, you could enter in high school at that time.
Okay.
Then you would attend the local all-girls Catholic school in Milwaukee, but you live with the sisters. And so I just really thought, I knew like maybe I'm called, but not now, which is interesting. And so I kept that to myself, and I continued out, and we finished the come and see. My mom and dad picked me up, and then they just asked me, my mom asked me, how was it? And I got excited. I was like, it was really fun. We got to do this or try to explain things to her. And then she like almost like yelled at me, fun? What do you mean fun? That life is not fun. And I was like, I didn't know. And then I just I wanted to share like the graces that I received. Even though I was closed off the first week, I've received a lot the second half of the discernment time. And I realized anytime I talked about religious life when I came home, my mom didn't want to hear about it.
Wow.
Then I made a commitment to myself not to speak about religious life. And I don't know how long it's going to take for me to realize or when I would be able to enter. So I came back with my senior year in high school. I had to start thinking about college, things of that nature.
Thinking about the military still?
I did. It was there. And but I just didn't know what it was. I said to myself, stay open to religious life. I'm not yet committed to anything, but also still stay open to marriage life if God was still calling me there.
Okay.
I took classes in high school, one of which was a EMT class. So I can be certified as an EMT.
Okay.
One of the reasons I did that was because my mom, she wanted me to still go into the medical field. And I was like, okay, I'll go into nursing maybe, right? But I took that class specifically so I can receive a grace that I'm not called into the medical field. And when I took it, what happened was that we did our ride-alongs on the ambulance. So I really enjoyed the class. And then we had shifts. We had to do, I think, complete 12-hour shifts on the ambulance and 3 12-hour shifts in the hospital.
Wow.
I didn't think of anything. I remember going and you would shadow like the nurses, the ER nurses. And then they would just kind of point you, just go here and there. There was one time I was helping a nurse to transfer someone up to floors. Then I came down. But as I was helping them transfer someone up to floors, I see someone coming in, a patient coming into the ER, and they were performing CPR on him. And then when I came down, they're like, where are you? I was like, y'all told me to help transport someone up to the floors. Like, we need you in that room. You're going to take over CPR. And I'm like, okay. And I did. And I may have broken 2 ribs. And so I felt it. And then I could see it, like, I was like a little shocked. I kind of paused. They're like, you got to keep going. You got to keep going. They knew. And that wasn't yet the moment, but I was just like, there was something coming up. I felt it, right? Later in the shift, about an hour or so, I was called in to help assist a nurse with a patient. It was a baby girl who was about several months old, and they had to insert a catheter in her. So I have to help restrain the patient. And I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And the nurse, like, you need to help me on this. And so I said, okay. So I helped restrain, and then I think she noticed I was getting maybe possibly emotional, and I was. I wanted to cry. And she said, just help me, and then you can leave. And then, so she inserted the catheter, and then I left to try to find the darkest room I can find in the hospital. Near a hospital, there's not really any dark rooms because you have all like the monitors, everything going off. I just sat in one of the rooms and I just started crying. And I'm like, I'm not called to the medical field. And that was for me that sign. I'm not afraid of fluids or blood or things of that nature. I just felt like this is not where I can be for the rest of my life. Why I say this is because my community also have sisters who are nurses. Like we do a lot of the home health nursing. So I said, if I intern, I could probably be a nurse for our community.
Okay.
But I thought, no. So I rerouted to try to stay focused my senior year. I did finish the class, but I just never went through with the certification. And so then I started shifting it back towards the military, and then eventually, hopefully, what college do I want to go to? I remember the recruiters would come to our school, and there was one day at the end of the day, they had their booth, and it was the Marines, and they were not too far from me. They were like maybe 20 feet away from me. I was waiting for my cousins to go home, and I was just like, hey, I want to just, in my head, I said, let's just go up to them and talk to them. Like just, ask them. And I wanted to move towards them, but my feet were so cemented. There was no one around me. I mean, we were standing close to each other, but my feet felt so heavy, like I couldn't lift them. And I remember looking down. I'm like, what's wrong with my feet?
Wow.
And I was just like, they're like 20 feet away. Let's go over there. Maybe they'll give you some free things, right? And so the whole I was trying to encourage myself, and then it didn't work. And then my cousin came up, tapped me on the back. Hey, let's go home. And I turned, I went home with them.
Your feet could move.
Yeah, my feet could move. And so it didn't dawn on me at that moment, what could it be? So that from that moment on, I didn't have those desires anymore. Really? Considering the Marines or the military. I did share the story later with my cousin. This is when I already entered religious life. Not my cousin, my godbrother. He had just finished a 4 years with the Marines. And we were just talking about this, and I told him about this experience. And then he said to me, he asked me one question. He said, I hope I'm not being too personal. Do you know if you have any known medical or physical disabilities? And I was like, oh, I have scoliosis. I just, but it was never a problem for me. And he said, they would never have accepted you.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, maybe that was like a grace by God for me not to continue on with the process, because the rejection might have been the hardest part for me. And so I didn't think of it at that time.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, never thought of that. But that desire of the Marines never faded, in the sense like I still kind of found ways to weave it in, and I'll share that in a bit. But my senior year, one of the things I forgot to mention was that I started to drive to school.
Okay.
My brother's car. At the time, I didn't have my own car yet, not until the second semester. But I would drive to school. But one of the things that, since I was driving by myself, that I told myself that, how about I just start praying the rosary? Whenever I drove by myself, I would pray the rosary. And so, but wasn't praying for the graces for myself. I told God, I think you're calling me. I just don't know when, but I need graces for my mom. So I asked our Blessed Mother to help me for the graces for her to be open to this possible vocation of mine. However long it's going to take me to pray, I will do it. And so I would start praying the rosary when I drive to school, back home again, but never by myself. I didn't want to impose it on anyone. And at that time, none of my family were really, like, I guess you say, devout Catholics.
Okay.
And so,
not even your brothers?
No. My parents kind of left it on our own to kind of find our way in our faith. And so I prayed that. And so then also, again, with my desires to spending time with the sisters, okay, I'm gonna go for college. So I applied to only two. And I applied to Lamar University out in Beaumont.
Okay.
And then University St. Thomas in the heart of Houston. Very selfishly, not because, what career or degree plans that they have out there or at the schools. The reason why is because at this time, since my mom was not allowing me to have any contact with the sisters or talk about the sisters, I figured I'll just go to a school that the sisters are studying at so I can spend time with them. Yeah. That was the reason why I applied to those schools. And Lamar University responded to me first and said, you got accepted to our school. My mom found out. She's like, why did you apply out there? And I'm like, I don't know. And in my head, I knew. But I was like, I lied to her. I was like, I don't know. And then she said, well, just wait until what St. Thomas has. Because I applied to University St. Thomas.
Which is slightly closer.
Yeah, it's closer. She wants me at home. And I was like, and I got accepted. I was like, she said, "You're going to St. Thomas." I was like, yes. In my heart, I was like, yes, I get to see the sisters. I can still be close to the sisters. And I went. And
what was your course?
I was undecided.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Like one of the sisters like, "You're going to St. Thomas, a private school, and undecided." And I was like, and I didn't want to tell her the reason why I applied. Again, the reason I applied was like just to be with the sisters. But no one knew. And eventually I did. When I entered after my first year, I applied as a music. I wanted to study music education.
Okay.
So
a music teacher.
Yeah, I wanted to be a music teacher. It was more of instrumentalist. Not like I can sing to myself. No, I think I can sing, but I was more of an instrumentalist because I was in marching band for a year and I studied music when I was in grade school and I really loved it and I saw that I had a gift for it. But I was like not until I entered my vocation that I made that I declared my major. I studied for a bit, then I transferred over to theology and focused on that. But yeah, so came my senior year, graduated, and then went to college. And so having that focus now in my first year of college, even though I was just taking my core classes to complete them as much as possible. And I still at this time did not know yet if God was calling me.
Wow.
So I said to myself, okay, God, I know I'm praying for this grace for Mom to accept my vocation. But since I'm not yet in the vocation to the religious life or entered or committed or made any kind of commitment, I felt that it was also right and appropriate that I stay open to the possibility of marriage life because I'm not committed yet, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, it doesn't hurt. I'm in college, I'm older now, and I'm not just dating just to date, but hopefully dating to be also discern marriage life. And when I attended college, I had this classmate of mine. He and we had all the same classes together, same professors, same time, which is kind of ironic and then also odd at the same time because it's very rare that all your classes will be the same professor, same time. And so I didn't think much of it at that time. And then we started to just sit near each other in case we missed notes.
Okay,
we can catch up, right?
Yeah.
Then the more I have gotten to know him, I was just like, this guy is not, he's like, maybe someone I can consider dating. Right? And he attended daily mass. He altar served at St. Thomas as well. He would also pray the liturgy of the hours and rosary. So it made time for adoration. So I was just like, this is like a great holy guy. Right? And so I don't know if he knew. I think he knew that I was somewhat discerning my vocation because I would have the sisters would give me their newsletter and I would bring it. I would just lay it on my desk. And then, so he noticed that. I think he knew, but I didn't remember sharing with him. Then I was like, okay, there was one time we were playing racquetball. I was like, maybe today would be the day that I would maybe share with him that I have possible feelings for him and consider dating and discern whatever God wills for this. And so we're walking back from playing racquetball to the library that I was like, maybe I'm going to tell him. So as we approached the library, I was like, hey, there's something I need to tell you. Oh, he said first. There's something I need to tell you. And I was like, there's something I need to tell you too. And I told him, you go first. He said, are you sure? I was like, yeah, you go first. And he said, pray for me. I'm discerning my vocation to the priesthood. And I'm like, okay. And so I was like, how can I tell him now that I might have possible feelings for you? And so he's like, okay, your turn. And I lied to him. And I'm like, I can't remember what I need to tell you. I was like, what do you mean? You just tell me, you need to tell me something. I'm like, in my head, don't tell him. It's like, I just forgot. And he's like, okay. And then I said, I think we're about to study for a test or something too. And I was like, no, I can stay in there and focus now. And I said, I have an urge to go to the chapel and pray. I just need to go to the chapel. And so he's like, you sure? It's like, yeah. And if I need anything, I'll find you in the library. So I take that, what seemed like a 2-mile hike to the end of the academic mall of St. Thomas. I went in there. I didn't remember it was a weekly adoration. And I remember opening the doors. I was like, great. And I remember seeing Jesus exposed on the altar. And I'm like, great. I don't want to talk to you right now. I really said that to him. Well, I was stubborn. I was like, I'm going to still sit here. And then I sat there for a bit and I just started hashing everything. I was just like, I thought this might be the guy. I stayed open to, the possibility of marriage life. This guy is the ideal guy. He does this, and I listed all the holy things. mass, daily mass, adoration, rosary, liturgy of the hours. And I was listing everything that was holy about him. And I realized in my own heart, what I was really thirsting for was this life of holiness. And then when I just kind of hashed everything out, the moment of silence kind of passed by, then I heard in my heart, trust me. So I think at that moment, I really believed that Christ was telling me to stay focused on my possible vocation to religious life. So all that was happening. And I continued to pray. I commuted to St. Thomas. I don't know if it was the wisest decision as a freshman, going from North Houston down to downtown. The commute was always like an hour to an hour and a half in the morning.
Oh, boy.
And then even in the afternoons, it was like a quick commute out. But going in, like, okay. But I was praying the rosary over and over and for the same purpose. As I had shared earlier, in March, about almost 2 years to the date, almost, we were having breakfast. And then my mom had asked me, so do you still want to become a sister? This is without me kind of like urging that or initiating that. And so she said,
you'd been quiet all this time about it.
Or she kind of had these hints. I would attend some events that the sisters would invite me to. And but I just kind of just brush it off the table when she asked me. Right? I will come back. Like one of the two celebrations that we have on a yearly basis, but we send out invitations like for the celebration of St. Martin de Porres. We have a huge devotion to him in the Vietnamese Catholic community. And I would attend the mass down there at the community with the sisters, and they would hand out candles, votive candles for us to pray with. So I would come in with like 2 votive candles in my hand because I want to light them in my room, right? And so my mom, she sees like, I left early morning and I was formally dressed as I was going to mass. I'd come back, and before I would go to the parish to prepare myself to be to assist. I'm a TA for the class, and then and I couldn't lie to her. And so she's like, "So did you go to the sisters and attended the mass? Because they would broadcast. They would also share the information on the Vietnamese radio about the mass at the sisters." And I was like, busted. I mean, I have two candles with St. Martin de Porres' face on there, and I'm like, "Did you go to the mass there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And that's the end of the conversation. I would just go up to my room and get myself ready. But when she asked me, I was like, is she for real? In my head, I'm like,
she's bringing it up.
Yeah, she's bringing it up. But I'm like, I don't want to initiate this. She asked me again, so do you still want to become a sister? In my heart, I was about to say yes, like jump on that as soon as possible. But then I said, I was very like that grace at the moment, the actual grace God gave me, just calm down. Then I prudently said to her, Mom, if you allow me to enter, I would love to enter this summer. I will ask for the paperwork and enter this summer. Because at this time, I was still in contact with the sisters. And she said, you have my permission to enter. So I really didn't know what was the true source behind it. I would say yes, for sure, grace. But I also had to wonder, like, maybe her friends that encouraged her to give me this opportunity. And so, but I was just like, okay. So I contacted the sisters. And the sisters said, let me talk to our provincial superior at that time and see what she says. Well, I'll get back in contact with you. So a few weeks passed. She said, our superior has accepted you, but she wants you to come back to a come and see. We will send you the paperwork, fill it out, come back to a come and see, because I know you kept in contact with the sisters. Because I don't live too far from our community in North Houston. It's just our preschool. We have a preschool in North Houston. And I would go and visit the sisters. The sisters know me fairly well. And I didn't know at that time. I thought they invited me because I just need something to do during the summer, or throughout the year. But then I come to find out the reason why they invited me back was so they were help nourishing my vocation. And so I was just like, oh yeah, I had nothing else to do. I would just spend time with the sisters and the children there and volunteer there. And so the sisters knew of me. And I went to come and see. I had the paperwork, but I was filling out my paperwork before I entered to visit for the come and see. I was trying to write my legal name. My legal name is only 3 letters long and it starts with an N. It's NGA. It's Nga. And I went down on the downstroke of the N. And then I froze. And I'm like, I can't do this. Then I said to myself, why am I rushing this? So there was like this voice. I'm like, why are you rushing this? You have just go complete your 4 years and then you enter. Why go now? There's no need to go now. But there was a voice deep down in my heart that said, no, this is your time. everything you prayed for is for this moment. And I had this struggle. It's like, it's not going to hurt if I wait after my 4 years to complete my degree. But again, I have not declared my major, so I'll just be a liberal arts major, I guess, at that time. But so I was struggling between these inner voices, and I was like, I need to make a decision. So, I mean, my mom and dad did not know that I did this, but I did what I thought was best. I saw a quarter on the desk, and I was like, heads or tails? Heads, I will go to come and see.
Wow.
Tails, I will complete my 4 years of college, and then I enter. It just takes one. So I was like, okay, heads, just go to come and see, and then see if the graces are there, and then, or tails, we'll just finish up college.
So you really left it to the coin?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, again, my parents probably weren't proud of that after probably spending so much for me after 1 year at St. Thomas, but that was a decision. I had to make a decision. And that was, to me, at that moment, the best decision. And I flipped it. And I caught it. I palmed it. I was like, heads. And I was like, 2 out of 3. And so I took it and I flipped it. I was like, okay, I'm not going to palm it. I'm just going to open it. And then okay, let's go 3 out of 5 because it's heads again. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to just let it flip it and I'm going to just drop it on the desk, right? I flipped it a third time. I'm like, okay, 5 out of 7. And so it was heads, and heads. And I'm trying to do whatever you can. Flip it heads first, flip it, tails first, whatever, letting it drop. And it was 5 times out of 5 was heads.
Wow.
It has not yet been tails. So I was just waiting for that one moment for it to be tails. So I was like, God, it's been 5 out of 5. Let's just go with 7. Let's go. I'm giving you 2 more opportunities. Let's go for 7. And I flipped it 2 more times. It was both heads.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not gonna. I didn't take like probability or statistics for math, so I'm not gonna try to figure out. One of my students, and I can't remember what they said, what the probability was for that to happen. 7 times, just 7 times flipping was all heads. And I'm like, okay. So I told myself I'm not gonna fill out the paperwork because that seems a little bit overwhelming right now. I'm just gonna come and see, and just see what happens. So come and see at this time, I believe was 2 weeks long. It was shortened. And from my previous 2 years, and then went, stayed open, and there was a moment when we were in adoration, and all the readings of that week was basically disciples giving things up and to follow Christ. And I was looking at Jesus. I said, I never said this to you. I know I've said it to all my family members and friends. They're like, can you give this up? Can you give that up and follow Jesus or become a sister? I was like, yeah, I can do that. I can give up my scholarship. I can give up my car. At this time, I had my own car, which was a Nissan Xterra. So I kind of like graduated from my brother's car and into the car that I have. I can give that all up. And then they're like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, it's easy, right? But then I realized when I was sitting in adoration, I've never said that directly to Jesus. So I said, Jesus, I know I never said this to you, but I'm going to give up everything and follow you in this vocation. And my heart started to beat, and I was just crying. I'm glad that it was not like a verbal cry. It was just like the floodgates were open.
Yeah.
And the more I said it, the more my heart was beating faster. And it was a sense of peace. It was not scared. And then I was like, okay, I think this is a sign that he wants me to be here and with this community. And so we were called out of adoration early. It was the night before, if I can remember, the night or before our last night together, or around that time. But we didn't stay for night prayer with the sisters, but we jetted out. And I decided to go to our Marian garden. We had a statue of Mary and we had a little fish pond. And the girls went back to our dormitory area. And I just sat there. I was like, I don't know what just happened in adoration. And Mary, Mom, like, this is what you and your son want me to do. Like, just to give up everything to follow you and your son in this vocation. Please give me a sign. And then it's Houston, so summer in Houston. It's muggy. There's no wind. There's nothing. So I remember just what it feels like. I'm asking for a sign, but I have no clue what that's going to be. But I remember how yucky it was outside.
Yeah.
In the nighttime, and it became quiet, and I hear wind chimes. It rang for a few seconds, and it stopped. And I looked at Mary, and I'm like, "Are you? Is that my sign?" and I was like, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just like a fluke. Maybe there was some wind, right? And I was like, I'm gonna ask again. I'm gonna forget about what happened in adoration. Let's forget about what I just heard, and I'm gonna ask you a second time. Is this what you and your son want me to do? To give up everything to follow you and your son in this vocation with this community? If so, please give me a sign. Same duration. Hear the wind chimes again, for the same length. And it stopped. And I'm like, let's just forget everything. I'm going to ask a third time.
So it's the coin flipping all over
basically,
again.
me and bargaining with God and his son and his mother. So I was like, oh gosh. And then I asked a third time. I was like, let's just forget everything. Everything has happened so far. I'm going to ask you one last time. Is this what you and your son want me to do? To give up everything to follow you and your son in this vocation? And if so, may I have a sign? And same thing happened. Same duration, hear the wind chimes, and it stopped. And it was really, again, providential. I don't know all the things that were happening right around me. I was just in that moment. Because after that third time, I just like put my head down, crying. But again, it was tears of joy. It was not like, oh no, or fear. I was never in fear. I was always at peace.
So you were alone at this point?
Yes, I was. And I did think about like, okay, like, where was everyone else? And then after I had kind of surrendered that third time and I was crying, then one of the girls who was with me come and see, she comes out the door. It's one of the entryways into that garden area and back into the community. And then she was like, where were you the whole time? And I remember looking at her, like, I've been here the whole time after we came out from adoration. And in my mind was like, if you were to go look for me, wouldn't that be the first door for you to come out to look for me? And I was just like what all happened? What the time stands still for me at that moment. Or, or the girls were just like kind of almost like frantic. I don't know what's happening inside in the community, right? But those are kind of the things that came in. And I was like, maybe God just allowed me that moments with him.
Yeah.
Without disruption. Right? Because anything could have happened at that time. And you were just like, even them coming out even earlier to find me out there. But I used to remember that moment. So people wondered, did you ever look back to see there was wind chimes there? I just, in my heart, there was no need for me to. And I'll be honest with you, I probably freaked out that there was nothing there.
It's like wind chimes. It's like wind chimes around here.
But yeah, so I never looked back. But I remember it was over my like left shoulder area and ear.
So you never looked for them?
No. No. But even if
or have you heard them since over there?
We had wind chimes, but from the location where I heard them, I don't recall us ever hanging wind chimes in that area.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I made that commitment. I'm going to enter. And it was funny because I think I was supposed, I was supposed to send in my paperwork beforehand before I enter. And I enter the day of, and the sister's like, where's your paperwork? And I'm like, oh, it's right here. So it's like they almost they were like forced to take me now. But yeah, so I entered officially with our sisters in 2004. It was 2002 when I first discerned with them. A time passed, and then 2004 I entered with our sisters. How
did your parents take it?
That time when they dropped me off at the convent, the goodbyes were not easy.
Oh.
Yeah, especially my younger brother.
Really?
Yeah. We hugged. He walked away. He didn't want to turn back. I can see him wiping his tears. And it was, I think, in a sense, it was like a loss. Because this is my first time like away from family. But I mean, away, but still like only 45 minutes away from the family.
But even when you were in college, you were commuting. So
this is like my first time away from the family. But I didn't know how much it affected my family until my brothers told me. And they said, yeah, mom and dad, I think they just didn't know how to process everything because they would not talk to each other for like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So they said dinners were difficult. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, it was not meant to be
just
that.
Awkward dinners?
Yeah, it was just awkward. Yeah, because it was like there was a loss in the family. Like, it was like, yeah, but it sounds silly, right? It's not like you didn't die or anything, but it was just like, it's just something new in our family. We never experienced something like this.
Did they think they'd never see you again? Is that
it's possible. I've never asked them all of that, but I remember then the sisters found out about this. They never told me directly. I was my brothers will always find ways to share with me, usually like years later. But I didn't realize how much it affected them, you know. But I think it was just a time of processing, you know, what this all means. And I come to find out later that one of my mom's friends had really encouraged her to just allow me to go, take it one step at a time. She said that she enters, but she's not going to be like yet permanently like there, you know, to vows. And there's a time of formation and trial, right? And so I think that's what allowed my mom to allow me to enter. Because I remember her asking me when I would go home on home visit, she said, so how long, when are you going to be home again? Or how long is this process? In my head, I was like, it's not the military. It's not like I give 4 years and I come back, right?
Like, when do you get your orders?
Yeah. How long do you stay? So, but I was grateful for her friends who just really encouraged her, just let her go, right? And then I think also letting them know, like, you don't want her to regret or have these hard feelings if she's not able to, you know, or discern improperly other vocations. And so I just like, okay, went and just then continued on. And so since 2008, this summer will be 20 years I'd entered. So it's been a huge blessing for me. Were there other moments of graces? Yeah, for sure. Moments in which God like allows me to kind of even look back on certain things in my life that, man, this is how I knew of God's love for me. This is how I first experienced God's mercy or God's grace. I mean, God's forgiveness in my own life. And helped me to find ways, especially like, even though my dad's not Catholic, right? I tell my students, I learned so much from my dad. Like, and that also can sometimes help with reminding like the role of fathers in the family, right? Did my brothers see that? Probably not the same way that I see certain events in my own life. Even though that they involved my brothers in one way. But that's how God allowed me to see his graces working. And it really instilled in it once in a while when needed, right? It creeps up. Wrote anecdotes in our life, right? And it's just ways to weave in 20 years. I mean, at first it seems like it's not slow. It's not like, oh, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? But like after 2 years of postulancy, well, I can request to enter novitiate. After 2 years of novitiate, I can request to make first profession of vows. And then we renew our vows for 6 years. And then your wedding day, right? Final profession of vows. Like, it just moves. And then
so what was it like, your final profession?
Oh gosh. So
were your parents there?
Yes. So it was like they do walk us down the aisle. My parents got a chance to do that twice because our first profession of vows.
Okay.
The way like they're like giving us to the church, right? And then for my community, also for our final profession of vows, they walk with us down the aisle. So it's like literally like a wedding.
Yes.
So I remember at moments when I attend my cousin's wedding, I'm just like I saw them, and I was like, man, my dad would never get that opportunity to walk me down the aisle. But I forgot like first profession of vows and final profession, so he got to do that twice.
Yeah.
So it was like an honor for him. But my actually preparing for final vows, it was there was a moment like I was like, yeah, I know this is where God's called me. I mean, lived this for this amount of years and had my moments. I mean, my years of renewing my vows. Then there was a moment I had like cold feet, and I was just like, I don't. And I went to my formator, and she just asked me, how are things? And I said, I don't know. And I think if I remember the timeline correctly, I've already received the letter saying that we have accepted you to make final profession of vows, right? But then I had some kind of cold feet after that, and I was just like, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life. And I told her that she was like surprised. She said, like, you filled out there, you petitioned to like make final vows, and now you're like questioning. Not so much question. I was like, I told her, it's like I don't know if I can be committed to my vows because I'm realizing the weight of it now, right? This is because I'm not renewing it year after year.
This is the final.
Yeah. But we do a renewal, but it's not in the sense of like an expiration date. It's like, we live 1 year. And so she told me, I want you to go pray. And I was like, in my head, like, that's always the answer. Go pray, go pray. I was like, fine. You want me to pray? I'll pray. Because I remember that we already had our new chapel, because in 2014 was when we had built our new chapel, and I was sitting in front of the statue of St. Joseph. So it had to have been some time I already received my letter. And I sat there, I was like, can you give me a sign, Jesus?
Oh, come on.
I was all the time.
Another sign you're asking? Like,
I know, I've been there for at least almost 10 years, right?
and you're still asking for signs.
I was like, yes, I had to. Because I guess God knows like how stubborn I am. And so I said, I just need a sign. Like, this is where I can do this. Because I can ask an extension, actually. After 6 years, I can ask for extension for renewal of vows.
Okay.
But I've already had requested to make final vows. And so it was lunchtime. We were in our refectory for lunch. And after that, I was sitting a few tables away. We had one table where a lot of our elderly sisters would sit. And they're the ones that need assistance. And sometimes they were in wheelchairs, things of that nature. And I was just like staring at them. And it was the same routine almost every day. We will eat, clean up and things. But I was just still sitting there. And all the other tables, the sisters cleared out. And I'm looking at them. And the sisters were just patiently waiting for these other sisters who were assisting them to come back from down in the kitchen. And there was something in my heart said, that there's your sign. The elderly sisters. And I brought that into prayer. And I said, if they can stay committed to their vocation, then I can be committed to my vocation. And I remember, after sharing that with my superior, my formator, she said that, every day she has to pray for that grace of commitment, right? And it's not like a given. Yeah. You gotta request for it and then also ask for those graces and cooperate with God's graces to be faithful in our vocation. So I think that was one thing I was forgetting. Like, I think it's like when you say committed, like you make this lifelong commitment, but it's something you have to continue to work and cooperate with God's graces each and every day. Right? And she said that, one of the unfortunate things that even in religious life is sometimes the fear of commitment, right, is seeping through. And so sometimes we have young men and women who gone through formation and get to this point where you have to make this commitment that we become fearful, right? Or they discern out because this lifelong commitment. And then you can see that in relationships as well. Like people they don't want to get married because they have to make this commitment, right? Yes. I just want to cohabitate or live together without the commitment. Like, but the commitment now living, 10 years after my final profession of vows, it was so needed for me to stay faithful to Christ in my vocation and my vows. Were there going to be times that we might have, there may be challenges? Yeah, for sure. There'll always be challenges there. But realizing, okay, I'm His. So here's the funny thing. Like, yeah, I'm His. So anything that goes wrong in this relationship, it's all on me. That's one thing people are getting, right? Like, I can't blame yes, I might have some challenge with the sisters, but ultimately it might actually be me that's causing this challenge, right? But in between Christ and I, it's just everything's on me. So I have to okay, really accept that. But asking for the graces to help me to be better the next day, right? So that commitment was so needed to help me to try my best to live faithfully to Christ each and every day.
Now, your parents, do you think it would have been easier for them if you had a sister, if there was another girl?
I don't know. I thought about, let me share this though. So she brought that up. When I was young, my mom was pregnant with my youngest brother. Not youngest, but my other brother. My dad, I remember my dad asking me, I don't know if he remembered. I remember him asking me, do you want a sister? This is easy. I was a little kid, right? I was 3 at that time, about to be 4. And I was like, yeah, it's easy. You just ask for it and they come. I've seen a lot of cartoons, right? They come dropping, a stork comes dropping a baby at the front steps. And I was like, yeah, I want one. And I was like, okay. So I thought that they're going to try for a 4th child. So I don't know if they did. I've never asked them. And I will continue to pray for her sister. Even as I entered religious life, I'm in my late teens. And I was 19 when I entered. And in my 20s, I was still praying for a sister. And I'm like, I have to give up on this prayer because I don't want to be surprised, right? Like, oh, look, you have a baby sister. But then when I made final profession of vows and I was recalling that, and I was like God did answer my prayers in a different way. He gave me 100-fold in a different way, right? But would it have been easier? I really don't know. I've never thought of it because some people say it might be easier because there's now 2 girls in the family, and one can go and one can have grandkids for them. But I've never thought of it because we've always grown up as a family of 3. And there was moments we had our struggles as siblings.
Of course.
But we were also tight-knit. And I'm grateful that my parents were open to life and having us. But I honestly have never, ever thought about, man, if mom and dad had a second daughter, it would probably been easier. Maybe they would give her permission because people would think like maybe then that would be easier for you. But I said, well, in the Vietnamese culture, that the oldest daughter has a responsibility to help care for the parents when they get older. And so I don't think it'll be much easier for me to enter. Maybe the younger sister.
So if you had an older sister, then
some people like, maybe. Who knows? Or my parents become again so protective of wanting us to be a family or to get married, right? Because that's what's more common. And I desired that too as a kid growing up. I thought I was going to get married. What was my first desires of my vocation? Saw beautiful marriages, and I wanted to be a mom. And that was funny because I told myself in my heart that if I was going to be a mom, I want to have 4 kids. I don't know how that's going to, 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. However many kids it takes to have at least 2 boys and 2 girls, I'm going to go for it. Why? Because I just want to one up on my mom. Because she had 3 kids, right? 2 boys and 1 girl. But I said, I just want to one up on my mom, God. But my first desires was to get married. And, but then again, that all one way or another, those desires of wanting to be a mom really helped me in my vocation as a sister, because we're called to be spiritual mothers, right? Or to be spiritual fathers. Like people think that we don't have those desires to be parents or to be husbands and wives. No, we do. Because our vocation as sisters are to be spiritual mothers. So there is still that nurturing aspect because it's what's in our nature.
Yes.
Right? And to raise in the ways that we're called to raise God's children or give birth to God's children, right? Spiritually. And so.
And you have your students.
Yes, my students. So I say that. That's why I call my students my children.
My kids,
right?
yeah.
So I always try to get out jury duty. They were like, do you have any kids under 8? I don't remember what is it. I was like, yeah, like 120 of them. And I was like, no, I can't do that. And so I try to find a way to get out jury duty at times.
So speaking of the possibility of marriage, do you ever, that guy that did he make it through seminary?
He discerned out.
He discerned out.
He discerned out. Yes. And so my students were always curious, like, what do you do? It's like he discerned out. He's married now.
Okay.
And then
did he ever find out that you?
No, I never told him.
Okay.
I mean, he might find out now, but no, I'm happy for him because I entered before he did. He completed his studies at the university, and then he discerned.
Okay.
And so we just kind of more or less kept in contact through one of the sisters who were studying there. They'll say, "Hey, so and so said hi to you." I said, "Oh, thank you." So then I was praying for him. He did discerned out. And then when I found out he got married, I was like, we found our vocations. And some people are like, when I tell my students the story, they're like, "Sister, that could have been you." I'm like, no, I don't think that. I don't think that I would have been his wife. Like now that he's married, right? I don't think that. I'm happy for him because that's how God called us to pray for one another. And I believe that he was praying for me in my vocation because when I entered first.
But boy, are you glad that you didn't tell him
I know.
first.
I was like, but I was like, I just hope my kids, it's like, guys, why me didn't have the same feelings for me? Right? Like, I was like,
imagine how awkward that would have been.
And I was like, yeah. And so I was like, I'm glad I didn't tell him. But I'm also very grateful for his friendship. Yeah. And then again, I continue to pray for him in his vocation.
So that desire for the Marines, did it still stick with you?
Yeah, it's still, the desires were there, but it was not like to serve. But I've always asked God, okay, why did he give me those desires? And how can I use that? Whenever I go and give vocation talks, one of the questions that comes up, like, how do you know which community, which order is the best one or the one that's for you? And then I said, well, each community is given a specific gift. So a charism, a gift of the Holy Spirit. And there's going to be a specialty in which they build up the body of Christ. So think of the military. You have your 5 branches, and each of them have their specialty. The Marines kind of like taking everything. They take a little bit of everything. But each of them have a specialty, whether it's infantry, like on land or water, things of that nature. But they have their purpose in which they are protecting us, right? And so in the same way, I kind of see it as an analogy that the charisms are those specialties like we have like in the ways of that particular service of the military to help us, to guide us, to use those gifts and talents in which it builds up the body of Christ. So God doesn't strip us of our gifts. He uses our gifts for his kingdom.
How many years has it been since your final profession?
I made my final professional vows in 2014. So 10 years.
10 years.
Yes.
So 10 years since your final profession and 20 years since
entering. Yes. So we have a 10-year, we were, I guess you could say, experimenting at that time as well with the postulancy. So my time, it was 2-year postulancy, 2 years of novitiate, and 6 years of temporal profession of vows. So 10-year of formation.
Did your parents say anything after your, perpetual?
Like, good job? No, they didn't. They was just like, another thing that I think what helped them was like, okay, this is where God's calling her.
What about your brothers?
It was always interesting. I mean, I think at first, so it was difficult. I'll admit that when I would go home, it was kind of awkward, like trying to engage in conversation because I was trying to figure out like, do I have to be proper with you? Like, you can't curse in front of you or whatever. And my brothers realized it's just still me.
It's like, do I have to talk about Jesus all the time?
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Like, I was afraid. Like, I don't want to have to talk. Like, but I was like, well, it's not fair if you talk about your girlfriend, your wives now all the time. Like, I don't get to talk about Jesus. So I kind of find ways to weave it in, but not make it feel awkward. And they know who I belong to, just as much as I know who their wives are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but it was, and when I made final professional vows, no, I think in the beginning, I think they were just trying to understand, like, how are we supposed to be around you? But they realized you can be normal. You know what I mean? I'm still your sister. You're still my brothers. Yeah. And so, I mean, when I go home on my home visit, we sit around and we'll talk, and they have their wives with them too. It's just great. It's just like we just pick up where we left off, and we have awesome conversations and laughs, and it was just the joy. They realized my vocation, but then I think they also realized the sense how free I am in my vocation, because they thought that if I enter that, they maybe never see me, or it's very limited. But I mean, I said to them like, my husband is Christ, right? But it allows me to be free to be with y'all and your family and to share this joy with you guys.
So they were thinking like you'd be a cloistered nun
well, I think they don't know. I mean, I would say my only religious experience was Sister Act. And so a religious encounter is Sister Act. I was joking. It's like the only encounter besides like the sisters at my parish was like Sister Act. Right? But I don't know. Like they just probably, because it's just like the stereotype that you see about religious nuns and sisters in movies and TV is like strict and like no feelings or expressions on their face. And I could be that. I can be that at times, but it's not. And I'm still me. I still joke around. And I think one of the great things was I caught up with one of my friends, and she's like, it's like you never change. Like, it's just what you wear. I was like, yeah, I've never changed. I mean,
you're still you.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that a lot of people are afraid of when they're into their vocation or discern a vocation, like God's going to strip them, right? Like, take your pride away. Well, that's one thing he's going to strip you of, but like, he's not like taking everything from you and starting with a blank canvas, right? If he's a true artist, he sees what's at hand and he'll make it into a masterpiece, right? Need to add this, a little this to make it to be a full picture. So that's what a true artist would do. They're like, okay, let's just start on a blank canvas and see what we can do. But no, he would just touch up where it needs to be touched up. And so I think that's what he did with me. Yeah, there are things like, of course, conversation-wise, it'll be different now. Like it was not like free for all back then. You're not censored, I guess you can say. But it was an opportunity that it was just for my brothers and I to realize, okay, even it's them as parents, now husbands, right? There's things that how they're able to talk or the conversations that they'll bring up, it's not going to be the same like we were back then. I mean, we do have stories that we bring up, but those are just silly stories. So it just gives a good belly laugh, right? But like they're parents now. The conversations are not going to be the same. It's different. Yeah. So there's a little bit of like aging in our wisdom and our maturity, right? And as we are older, right? Like fine wine, right? So I love that time to spend with them whenever I get to visit with them during home visits.
Thank you so much for coming in and telling your story. Yeah, it's hilarious how you keep asking for signs.
Yes.
I love that part.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So so this coming school year, you'll be at what school again?
Monsignor Kelly, Catholic High in Beaumont.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Continue to pray for vocations in the church.
Definitely.
And I know that there's a lot of young men and women who want to discern, but I would say that sometimes they have cold feet, right? Spiritual warfare. And I think all of us go through it one way or another. And so I know that they want to, but there's just something, right? Maybe it's something personal that they have to overcome. So pray for graces for them.
Definitely.
And also for fidelity of those who've already made this commitment to our religious vocation to stay faithful to the very end.